welcome back to the AWA 1990 project. I'm your host, Alex G, and with me, as always, is Matt Riley. What's going on, Matt?
I am in isolation.
Good for you. You're out there saving lives. I appreciate you.
I'm saving lives by watching TV and recording podcasts.
That's the way to do it, my man. That's the way to do it. So, guys, we've got some really great feedback on the first two episodes of the AWA 1990 project. If you like this show, if you like what we're doing, if you like what we're all about, just make sure you hit the like button, subscribe, leave a comment in the comment section, and do me a favor, share it with a friend. Whether it be on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, I don't care. Just share it with somebody. Say, hey, guys, you got to check this out. This is pretty cool. That being said, we're going to go over some more of our latest signings on the roster that we're adding to our ever-expanding roster for our fantasy booking scenario. First up is the Samoan SWAT team.
Ooh.
That's right. Samu Fatu, the Samoan SWAT team, along with Paulie Dangerously.
They say Paulie Dangerously. We already know you're a psycho yuppie. Just how off can you be, huh? Just how dangerous do you want to live? Are you man enough to take a team? To take two men. One, Bruce Ward for a living. And another man that roamed the Isles of Samoa and hunted boars with his bare hands and ripped the flesh off their body and ate the meat because he was hungry. Are you man enough to do it, Paulie Dangerously? The fact of the matter is, when you talk about the dangerous lion, when you talk about Paulie Dangerously now, you talk about... You talk about Fatu. You talk about what's going to happen when the Fantastics get in our way. You talk about what's going to happen when the Road Warriors get in our way. You talk about what's going to happen when I get my call from the Midnight Express. When Dennis and Randy say, Paulie Dangerously, it's not time. Hey! Cornette and teach him how I said, oh no. It's not time to say, we lost, oh no. It's okay, boys. It's time, they say. They say, Paulie, don't get mad, Paulie, no. Get even. I'm going to get even, brother. I'm going to get even. I'm going to get even with you, Cornette. I'm going to get even with you, Stan. You guys have missed your match. I feel sorry for you.
Nice.
We're bringing Paulie back to the AWA. And the cool thing about the SWAT team, and I love them as a tag team. I prefer them as the SWAT team over the Head Shrinkers, first and foremost. Again, these are guys that can have fantastic matches with the Road Warriors. They can have fantastic matches with the Destruction Crew, but we're going to keep them heel. If you have wrestling promotions and you don't have a couple of Samoans in there, you need them, right?
Oh, of course.
I think
it's like having a Samoan in your roster in wrestling is one of the biggest no-brainers there is.
Every roster that was with them had some Samoans in the top spots. Let's be honest here. And, they're from the Benoit family, of course. You always want to keep Afa and Sika kind of happy. We're getting their boys some work out here. They're such incredible workers, and their style, was hard-hitting, high-flying. And their WWF run, I really liked the matches they had with the Steiners. I thought they were really good. They had good matches with the Road Warriors and WCW. Again, they're a team that's available that we can get. And you bring Paulie as a mouthpiece. And we'll go over the list of managers because, guys, it's still 1990, and managers are still a thing in 1990. So everyone quickly, before we go on to our next wrestler, we're going to quickly go over the roster of managers that we have here for the AWA currently. So, as we talked about, we're bringing in Paulie Dangerously, and he can do a lot of different things. You can put him on commentary. He can have an interview segment. He's very versatile, and obviously he's a mad scientist when it comes to wrestling booking. But we're going to keep him as far away from the money as humanly possible. Paulie cannot touch the money. Not in charge of any money. He's not good paying guys or not paying guys. Up next, we're going to bring in. I know you're not a big fan of this guy, but I am a big fan of Gary Hart. Again, he's someone else that's available in 1990. Again, but he's not long for this world. But I'm going to use Gary more as a conduit over Japan. He will be managing a lot of our international talent that comes in. So would it be luchadors coming in from Mexico, or guys coming from Europe, or guys coming from Japan? He's going to be managing those guys. But I'm going to use him more for his ability backstage, whether it be agenting a match or being a booker or tell me how the guys who have done it already. And if you're going to run a wrestling promotion, you don't have experienced guys with you, you're going to have a problem. So we're bringing in Gary Hart, Chicago kid, again, with our big initiative is homecoming, right? So we're very Midwest centric, very much Minnesota, Minneapolis, St. Paul, even in Chicago, Detroit. We're bringing these guys back home. So Gary Hart is in for us. Another guy who's currently in Florida, so we're going to pull him out of Florida, a guy who's made some appearances on the AWA before. He's a manager at this time, but later become a wrestler. We're bringing in Diamond Dallas Page. So Diamond Dallas Page, he's going to manage your Bam Bam Bigelow, your King Kong Bundys, and your, we haven't talked about them yet, but there's going to be other wrestlers in the quote-unquote Diamond Exchange. Perhaps even Paul Diamond. We'll see how that goes.
Nice.
But I like to have a good, you got to have a good core manager. Of course, we have Ellering in for the Road Warriors. That's a no-brainer. If you bring in the Road Warriors, you can't have them without Ellering. They're a package deal. If I need the Warriors to do something, I can go through Paul, and we can work that out. So I think having Ellering, again, he's another guy that on a promo, he's really, really good. It would be babyface or heel. So again, managers are still important in 1990. You see all the managers that they have in the WWF. You see the managers they have in WCW. We're going to pick up our own managers and have them come in. So those are our managers currently that we have on the roster. Our next wrestler, though, sticking with the Samoans. That's right. Kokina Maximus, also known as Yokozuna.
Oh.
So, Matt, what do you think Yokozuna brings to a promotion in 1990?
Well, we talked about the quote-unquote fat guys before in wrestling. And
yes.
To me, Yokozuna was more, yes, he was a large man with a gigantic ass. But he also had that sort of like monster heelish-ness to him, if you will. I think it'd be fantastic, especially for AWA in a sense. You want to have at least one or two people that are sort of, in a way, if you put a battle royal together, that are going to be like the guys that are going to win. Like everyone has to team up to get out of the ring, like, oh, man. And I think he would be a good for you. You could have a Samoan SWAT team and him be a group as far as that goes, I know he
absolutely.
was Yokozuna, but you know what I'm saying, like.
Well, he was a Samoan guy before that, so you can definitely put, you put Yoko with Paul with the SWAT team, you can tell them how they're related and all that kind of good stuff, and you can go on from there. Yoko is someone that is extremely athletic for a man of his size. And he has the capability of having great matches. Like, we can put him in main events with Ricky Steamboat. We can put him in matches with Scott Norton and have them be fucking insane. And Scott can fucking pick him up and throw him around and stuff. And that'd be very impressive. That's going to get Scott Norton over, which the more I watch Scott Norton, I've been watching his matches a lot. I just saw a match with him and Vader that's fucking insane. The more I'm like, this guy could be, if not the guy, as close to the top as you can be without being the guy. So I think Yoko brings us a lot of, he's someone that was there. He was there during this time frame too. So he brings not only great talent, great family lineage, great size. He brings continuity. So it's like we're not fucking doing what I hate in wrestling and this would kill WCW for me when Russo did the reboots. When he rebooted WCW, that was ridiculous. But so when you're bringing in new guys, you still have the guys that are already there to have continuity. That's super important. So we have the Samoan SWAT teams. We have Kokina Maximus. Hey, Matt, we had someone in the comment section of our last show suggested that we bring in Ahmed Johnson.
Oh, jeez.
Ahmed Johnson is a rookie at this time. I believe he's over in Dallas currently before he gets stint in Global. I love Ahmed Johnson.
Don't get me wrong. It's not that I don't have anything to say right now. It's just that I got so much hatred and anger inside of me for what you did to me, Double J. See, in the neighborhood, what you did was called drive-by. Punks in the hood do when they ain't man enough to face you face to face. They do a drive-by. Brad, a drive-by done to me once in the hood. And I'm not even gonna say what happened after that. But I tell you what, you did the drive-by, you did the crime, and I swear you'll do the time.
A little dangerous in the ring. and not great on the promo, but you look at him like he's a star. And he got over in his run in WWF. He got over like gangbusters until he got injuries, and injuries kind of curtailed his career. Then he started gaining some weight, and then he was Big T in WCW, and he had a match with Booker T over the letter T, which is ridiculous. I don't think I remember they had a T on a pole match, but I don't think that's true. I think that's my brain just imagining things. I don't think they had a T on a pole match, although they probably should have. It was WCW. So I guess for this show, we're not going to bring in Ahmed Johnson just yet. He's a little green. I'm probably going to send him over to either Portland or Memphis to work out any of the kinks, but he's someone, maybe for 91 or early 92 going into 93, he's someone that we definitely want to keep our eyes on. And there's a couple of guys over in North Georgia. One of them can really talk that I want to keep my eyes on. He's doing indies currently. And there's also a tag team over in Calgary that I have my eyes on that I might want to bring in a year or two. So, you got to keep on, you always got to be looking for new talent. Always. And, you're probably getting these 8x10s in and these videotapes, and you're sifting through hundreds of tapes to find the next guy, right? And sometimes you whiff on guys. Like I just saw MJF's Tough Enough audition tape.
Yep.
And the fact that he wasn't on that show is ridiculous because he had it like that. He's cutting promos in his living room, and he had it.
Yeah.
That's all I got to say about that. But yeah, Ahmed Johnson is definitely a guy that I will keep my eyes on for a while and track his progress.
No, I agree. There's a lot of time you think of people. I remember one of the earliest things we talk about is where do you practice your promos? And I remember one time when I was working with this a few years ago, I was trying to help this group get started around here, and one of the guys was trying to do a promo for the camera. So I was kind of coaching him. I'd sit there and talk about, here's what you want to say, who's your character? And his character, it was actually a good gimmick. The idea of the gimmick was that he was he had gone to Canada to avoid the draft, and now he was an anti-American, bad guy.
Okay.
All right, so it was kind of fun, and he was just, it was a good thing. So his promo was all of 30 seconds long, and he couldn't even put that together.
Right. So
we said, let's do this again next week. I want you to go home. I want you to, in your car, practice, just practice all the time. And he was like, so the next week he comes back, and he's still terrible. And I was like, did you practice? And he's like, I felt silly in my car. I'm like, you got to be able to go. I said, if you're at a show and they hand you a mic, you should be able to talk about whatever. If you've got to know your character. MJF is one of the best heels right now because he knows his character. He stays true to his character. You're right. There are guys that miss the boat on. I always say, there's two things that always make me laugh. One is guys that miss the boat on completely. And two are guys that and I don't mean this in a negative way, but to for example, I saw this tweet that Tyler Breeze put out. I forget his name now, what he's calling himself, but he was responding back to somebody who was like, oh man, they're wasting you down there. And he's like, I have a house, I have a business, I have my own school, I'm successful. And I think as fans, what we do sometimes, and I know this is our booking the shows to our ideas, is we have bigger ideas and aspirations than some of the wrestlers do. I mean, think about it. If you're making, let's say, $200,000 a year or $100,000 a year to be the guy that gets jobbed out, and gets some camera time every few weeks, just as much as the guy who makes me $250 and he gets a little bit more, do you care? I mean, you're wrestling professionally. People know your name. You have an action figure with your name on it. I think some of the fans have bigger aspirations from the wrestlers than they do.
Oh, I would 100% agree on that.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that I think about this sometimes. I to kind of go back to the '80s. I was a huge Paul Orndorff fan, massive. I wanted him to beat Hogan. I thought when he went to NWA, I was like, this is gonna be great, and it wasn't. But I do think that when it comes to guys you hit and miss on, finding that hidden gem, it's like Tom Brady, 6th-round draft pick. That was always the icing on the cake. He's one of the all-time best of all time, but he was a 6th-round draft. Everybody else missed on him multiple times. So you want to find that guy, and like you said, there are certain guys that just get it, and they get it from the beginning. So you want to find those guys and accentuate them.
100%, I agree. Next guy we're going to talk about, and I had second thoughts about putting him in the game, so I made a deal with myself. I negotiated with myself. So the next guy that's in that we're going to bring in for the AWA in 1990, he's a masked man.
Oh no!
And he is the Pegasus Kid.
Oh, okay.
Some of you may have heard of him before. This is Chris Benoit. Where do I start on Benoit? I guess I'll start from the beginning. In 2006, Chris Benoit was my favorite wrestler.
Wow.
I was the biggest Chris Benoit fan that you could ever see. You know, I was there at WrestleMania 20 when he won the title, the whole nine. I watched him through his early stints in WCW, and then going to the ECW, and then heading over to the WWF, and I watched him straight through. Immediately gravitated to him. I thought he was the second coming. In a lot of ways, he was the second coming of the Dynamite Kid. He wasn't necessarily all that great on promos, but he could get the point across. His matches with Kurt Angle are fucking phenomenal. His matches with Eddie Guerrero were off the charts. The guy had it, and he was my favorite wrestler. And it's funny, if you look at my 2006 list of favorite wrestlers, it's Chris Benoit, CM Punk, Samoa Joe, AJ Styles, and Bryan Danielson, now known as Daniel Bryan. And in the 14 years since, that list hasn't changed much. If you want to remove Benoit and Punk, and you can add Matt Riddle and Ricochet, then that's my list. My list hasn't changed all that much. So the reason why he's going in as the Pegasus Kid is that I don't want to have Chris Benoit on this show. Because for me personally, as a selfish wrestling fan, that whole Chris Benoit tragedy really, really hurt my fandom of professional wrestling. I became a father that same year, and I couldn't imagine doing that to my children. I remember I'm sitting there on Wikipedia as Wikipedia is changing live. I'm refreshing Wikipedia, and the shit is fucking changing. So like I'm sitting there following the story as it's going on. And then, we get all the information comes out, and they did it in Dark Side of the Ring, which I have not watched because I don't think I could watch it, because it makes me very emotional.
Sure.
So I can only imagine how Chris and Nancy's family feel about it. That's something that it's so hard to talk about for me personally. But for this game, the Pegasus Kid is in there, and one of the reasons why I'm going to bring him to the AWA is because he can have fantastic matches with a lot of different people. You can put him in the ring with Owen Hart and have a 5-star match. You can put him in the ring with Jushin under Liger and have a 5-star match. You can put him in the ring with Jeff Jarrett and have a potential 5-star match. Like, sure. This guy can bring it. And when we talk about wrestling styles, it's 1990. And there's a lot of independent promotions out there that want to bring it back to 1985. There's a lot of promotions that want to bring it back to 1975. And we're going to use a lot of the aspects of professional wrestling of its past. Again, they're there for a reason. But the way I want to preface this, I want to do year 2000 shit. Would it be in-ring ability, angles? We'll do old school wrestling with a fresh coat of paint on it. And one of the guys that pushed that style forward was Chris Benoit. His impact on professional wrestling and the way people work today, it's clear as that. You can see it. Would it be the multiple German suplexes? And you watch a Daniel Bryan match, and you're like, oh, okay. You watch Davey Richards when he was wrestling, you're like, oh, okay, I see it. So his impact on professional wrestling in general is huge. He's a piece of shit person. And I can't make any excuses for him. 2006 is when I stopped watching wrestling on a weekly basis because it hurt my fandom that much.
Yep.
And I remember I'm sitting there, I'm 6 rows in on the guardrail, WrestleMania 20. All right? And I see Nancy and Daniel run down the aisle to celebrate with Chris in the ring. Now, they probably didn't show that on the DVD version of that show. This is after the cameras, and they celebrate together as a family in the ring. as the confetti is coming down the whole nine, and that image is burned in my head.
Yeah.
So for this game, we're gonna have Benoit in as the Pegasus Kid, and I'm not gonna be like one of those douches. Like maybe if I go back in time, I could prevent this tragedy from happening. It's like the same thing. Like, oh, I'm gonna go back and stop 9/11, or I'm gonna kill Hitler when he's a baby. It's like we're not even gonna play into those scenarios.
Right.
He's just the Pegasus Kid as the Pegasus Kid, not anybody else. He's a 5-star match machine, and that's where we're going to book him as. So we're not going to go into anything. We're not going to get into anything deeper than that for the terms of this particular show. But if I'm being true to myself, in 1990, he's going to be one of the best wrestlers in the world. So we want to get him early, and he's a great addition. And he's someone that's going to raise our work rate to a level where they haven't seen that level of work rate in the AWA in a long time. Not since Billy Robinson and Vern Gagne. These guys were having great matches back in their day. We want to do a modern version of that, and he can give us that. So Matt, what are your thoughts on Chris Benoit coming into the AWA?
Well, I was a fan of his. I wasn't a huge, like you were. I wasn't a huge fan of him that way. But I think that yes, there's a lot of baggage there, and just the idea of bringing him in anyways as a Pegasus Kid. But I will always remember that night at the Raw taping, because it was the week after the whole limo explosion, and it was just
Sherry died that weekend before, I think. Sensational Sherry. So there was a lot of shit happening at once.
Yeah, and but I think if we're just talking strict performance-wise, he was a fantastic performer in the ring, and I always think back in time about, like, not that I'm saying Chris Von Erich would have been that kind of performer in any way, but I'm just saying, like, that you didn't have to be 6'3", 250 pounds. Like, there were others, like, Benoit was strong, but he wasn't, like, enormous, but he was all around just performed very, very well at a lot of different things, and I think, we tend to forget about that in the aftermath, but I think performance-wise, it'll be a good, and plus, like, having a good masked wrestler is just something that people always kind of enjoy. It's a staple in wrestling. I saw a thing the other day online. I think it was this old-time wrestling account on Twitter, and it was talking about the first ever steel cage match. And it was like, let's say 1915 or something like that. And it had a picture of this guy, and he was the first that they knew of masked wrestler, and he was called the Masked Marvel. And he was just basically a dude with a shitty mask on. But masks in wrestling are just such a huge part of the lore, kind of like the fat guy in wrestling, it's good to have. And I think if you have someone, again, if you have the right lore, you don't need them to be the best talker on the mic. I mean, look at Blue Demon Jr., or certain other masked wrestlers over the years. Like Mil Maskers was never great on the mic, I felt, but that's just me. But
he's no LA Park, that's for sure. He's not cooking in his kitchen.
Cooking kitchen, yeah. hey, retweet. So yeah, I think that's a great addition to the again, and keep in mind, everyone, not to get people commenting and angry, but this is a reimagining, and this is of the 1990 era, so it's before a lot of different things happened.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, we're going to use the benefit of foresight here. That's why, hey, we're going to bring in a rookie Steve Austin and take our chances here. I was torn, and I think about it for a long time, including him, but the more I watched 1990, 91, up until 92, it's like he's a big part of it, especially some of the Stampede stuff that's out there that's available. That's a couple of years prior to that. I mean, he started in 85, so he's a 5-year vet at this time.
Yeah.
So again, he's someone good to have on the roster as the Pegasus Kid, and not so much as Chris Benoit. I'm trying to separate the two, and that's the only way I can do it. Separate the man from the wrestler. It's very hard to do. That's the only way in my mind I can do it. So that's what I'm going to do. And not to end on a sour note, another guy that we are going to bring in, again, the guy that may have never gotten the opportunities back in the day, but again, he's fantastic in the ring. Has a great look about him. He's a good worker in the ring. We're bringing in Brickhouse Brown.
Right now, we're going to call out here Brother Ernest Angel. And here's some more of the good news from Brother Ernest Angel. No, that is not Brother Ernest Angel. I
I know Brickhouse Brown anywhere, and this is Brickhouse Brown. Brother Ernest is supposed to be out here today.
Let me tell you something. Lance, my heart is heavy today, Lance. Let me tell you something right now, you disgusting redneck. Get that mind out the gutter. I had a very emotional, disturbing phone call this morning. And I could just tell through the phone, through shaking words, Brother Ernest is in a bad way. The man is gravely ill. No, he's not suffering from AIDS. Get your mind out the gutter. But listen, Lance, this is just like a typical, we have a sick person here. I'm coming out here asking these people who really care. If you want to send your letters in to Baptist Memorial Hospital in Nashville, Brother Ernest would greatly appreciate all your letters of concern. And the money that you want to send in, please still send your money in care of this station. And I guarantee you, Lance, it would be greatly appreciated because the man is gravely ill. Can a body be ill without having to be rumored of suffering some kind of life-threatening disease?
Well,
The man is not suffering from AIDS. He's gravely ill.
Okay, he's gravely ill.
And I'm visibly shaken. This is supposed to be a joyous occasion for me today.
Yes.
Because let me tell you something right now. Through those shaking words, I could just feel the misery that the man was suffering from. And my heart reaches out to him. And I'm asking all of you people to just put your prejudice aside and show some concern. Because let me tell you something right now. Brother Ernest told me he had a sin. He saw the light. One thing about I want to say, I see all the slobber and dribble over the floor here. It looks like it came from Gary Young. Gary Young, don't you know Brother Ernest taught us better than that? He showed me the light. Now you running around here lusting at the heart of the flesh with Missy Hyatt. Sure you're going to watch her her back. Let me tell you something, Gary Young, you low-life, under-the-house sleeping, disgusting individual. The good book says if you think lust, you might as well have committed lust. And Gary Young, you're a disgusting individual. Now he's going now and try to watch Missy Hyatt's back. Let me tell you something right now, Gary Young. Brother, you will see the light and you will pay. And I'm going to tell you something else. There is some light on this situation. Brother Ernest told me he had a scene by two individuals here, formerly the Cuban assassins. They are no longer to be referred as the Cuban assassins. You understand? From here on out, it's the Cuban choir board. They are now part of the flock. What do you mean?
They're now part of the flock?
They are now associated with the coalition. It's the Cuban choir board. From here on out, no longer the Cuban assassins.
Okay, we'll try to make note of that, Dave. Cuban choir boys.
Please do. And please send your cards and your letters to Brother Ernest because I know he would greatly appreciate it. This was supposed to be such a joyous occasion today, and I feel real bad for Brother Ernest. I know you have some sorrow in your heart too, Brother Russell.
Yes, I certainly am disturbed by the distress.
And you don't believe those silly rumors about him suffering from AIDS, right?
No, I won't even discuss it.
You know that a body can be gravely ill without suffering from a life-threatening disease, right?
That's right. Okay.
So why don't the disgusting redneck that said that, get your mind out the gutter. Brother Ernest is not suffering from AIDS. The man is deeply sick.
We've got more action. I'm sorry to have to cut it off, but we do, and we will see.
So, Matt, what are your thoughts on Brickhouse?
Oh, Brickhouse Brown. I enjoyed his work. And again, a lot of this is going to be getting the most out of potential as opposed to sometimes guys who just did not. And, like I said earlier, I was watching AEW and Brody Lee was on, and, a perfect example of a guy who was kind of lost in the system. And I with all the problems going on in WWE right now, how many guys are going to eventually save themselves? And again, this goes back to my thing about earlier about, we have bigger aspirations than they do. But I think at a certain point, some of these guys, you want those guys who are hungry and want to have a bigger role and do more with their persona. Brickhouse Brown was a guy who could, in a lot of ways, be kind of a JYD 2.0.
I think if given the opportunity, he could have surpassed JYD.
Yeah. So
I thought he was that good. If you ever see, go on YouTube and just type in anything Brickhouse Brown. His shoot interviews. He recently passed away, I believe, last year. But his shoot interviews, his angles over in Memphis, hanging out with Brother Ernest Angel and doing that kind of cool stuff. His feud with the Stud Stable when Robert Fuller gave him a watermelon that one time and beat him with a leather strap. They were doing some type of angles there, but Brickhouse was game, and he can handle himself on the mic. He's 5'8", 242, jacked.
Oh,
you know what I mean? Jacked. Trained by Eddie Graham, trained by Terry Funk. He's like another version of like Iceman King Parsons. You know what I mean? He was another guy that we're bringing in, Iceman King Parsons, but we'll talk to him on a different episode. He had some shots in the AWA. Again, AWA historically has not been known to book African American wrestlers all that well, during their tenure. But Brickhouse is someone I think can get it over and over. Like he's gonna be with Jarrett. So the way I have it planned out, Jarrett's gonna be like number 3 babyface, and Brickhouse is gonna be around that same area.
Yep.
Number 3, number 4 babyface along with Jarrett, and they can team up and do some fun stuff as well as a team, or even feuding against each other. There's a lot of different things that you can use Brickhouse for, and he looks great. He's pretty good in the ring. Fantastic promo. Again, go watch the promo he cuts where a Brother Ernest Angel is homesick. So the Memphis crowd starts saying that he has AIDS, and Brickhouse is like, "No, get your mind out the gutter. He don't got AIDS." And the whole thing with Gary Young and Missy Hyatt, that's a phenomenal episode of Memphis Wrestling. So check that out if you haven't. But Brickhouse Brown coming into the AWA, and again, we're gonna mix it up, man. So we have guys who can wrestle that quote unquote super indie Japanese high flying styles. We're going to have our Southern wrestlers coming in. We're going to have our mass luchadors coming in. So it's going to be a great mix-up of talent and something that the AWA has probably never seen before, at least a whole lot of. I don't think a whole lot of luchadors came up to the AWA. I could be wrong, though.
No, I think that's right. That sounds right to me.
And the thing about AWA, it's always considered like boring wrestling. It's like if you ever watched WWF in 1975.
Yeah. Okay.
But AWA is doing that, but it's 1985. That's what it kind of seems like. Everything seems old, and we want to really kind of freshen up. Although you did have the Midnight Rockers having fantastic matches, and Bachwinkle can always go and have a great match, and you still have good workers like Hennig doing fantastic stuff, but it was always kind of presented that same fucking way all the time. So even though you have guys doing cool shit in the ring, it always felt old. And so we want to get away from that as much as humanly possible. So bringing in a lot of these guys in will change hopefully the mixture. So when we're making a stew, you need your potatoes and you need your carrots and you need your beef, to make a good pot of stew. So that's what we're doing. We're getting as many different styles in there as humanly possible. Guys that could talk. If they can't talk, they got a manager with them. I mean, that goes without saying. We got to make sure our production is tight. I want production that either rivals the WWF in 1990 or exceeds it. So that's the only way you can compete. Because you can have the best in-ring action in the fucking planet, but if your production seems like it's low budget, or it seems like an indie show, or it's a smoke-filled arena that looks like shit, no one's going to take you seriously. Look at New Japan and All Japan. Watch their shows from the 80s. They look like they're prime time. You know what I mean? They look like they're big time, major league professional wrestling organization. And I think the production in New Japan and All Japan rivals and sometimes exceeds WWF in the 80s. World class for all that time. And world class was in the Sportatorium, which is a piece of shit building. But their production was so good at the time that you look at 82, 83 world class, it's better than WWF, that's for sure. WWF production doesn't get really good until, I don't know, probably after this first episode of Saturday Night Main Event, possibly. Doesn't really get really good until the debut of Superstars and Challenge, which is in late '86, early '87, and then there's a big changeover from SummerSlam, from Survivor Series '87 to Royal. Like if you watch Survivor Series '87 and then you watch Royal Rumble, the first one '88, there's a big production upgrade there. No one's ever talked about why there was a production upgrade there. There just was. We want to make sure that we have production values that rivals anything you see on sports. I mean, that's the bottom line. That's the only way this is going to get over. I can have the best matches in the world, but they're not going to get over if it looks like shit.
Right.
And yeah, that's the reality of the situation. It's like the WWE currently, they haven't changed the look of their show in, what year is it? 15 years? Looks the fucking same. You know, and that's one issue they're having currently, is that the way they produce television has been exactly the same for fucking ever.
Well, even like if you look at like what's happening right now with the empty arena type approach, I think the first
they're still doing it the same way.
They did make one change. They moved the camera, the hard camera, from the looking down to the ring from with the entrance to your left to now it looks down with the entrance behind you. That's the first, and that was something AEW has been doing. Again, like I said, the AEW show is entertaining and, excuse me, I like the presentation, but WWE is just, again, you said, it's kind of stagnant. Like, you remember for like a while, like you had a Raw theme.
Mm-hmm. My Raw, or whatever.
Right, like my Raw theme was the one that was the I think it was the guys from Anthrax did it. It was a really hardcore one years ago, but there's been some more where it's like ugh, like even now like the SmackDown one. Are you ready? It's like just I'm not saying
Is Saliva still doing it? It feels like it's very 2004.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think you need to have some changes so often and shake things up, and it's just been very like. Even now, like they have the kind of those three-dimensional things, which is okay, it's fine, whatever. But I liked the way for a while the then, now, forever, with like kind of the showing the passage of time.
Yeah.
But I do feel that there's a lot of it that you have to do a fresh coat of paint every so often to shake things up.
I do.
So
even if it goes so far as changing the colors, Raw's been red and black for I don't know, almost 30 years at this point.
Yeah,
SmackDown is black and blue, and maybe times to change up those colors a little bit. I mean, that's the reality of the situation. That's where they find themselves currently. This is a good, what's going on in the world today is a good opportunity to make some wholesale changes, and I feel they're not even going to even try for whatever reason, and I think it's a wasted opportunity for them, unfortunately. But what's not a wasted opportunity as a new segment that I'm going to debut on this particular show.
Uh-oh.
And this segment is crazy stuff that Greg Gagne says.
Okay.
Now, I went back and I watched a lot of Greg Gagne interviews, read a couple articles, and I like Greg. I think Greg has a great mind for the business. That being said, sometimes Greg comes across as that kid in middle school that tells you that he has a girlfriend and she lives in Canada. But here's the thing about Greg, though. You would go to Canada and find out the girl was actually real. Because a lot of the stuff he says, it sounds completely insane. And we'll get to the first thing that I want to get to on this show. It sounds completely insane, but you can make an argument, you can make a case that, like, okay, he's not lying. That's the thing, he's not lying. It's just the way he turns a phrase and the way that he doesn't explain it completely sometimes leads you to think that what he's actually saying is what he's actually saying. So the first one I want to go over is that Greg Gagne claims that he and Vern invented the NWO. Now, on the surface, when you tell someone this, if I go to somebody, if I go to a friend of mine, if I post it on Twitter, hey, Greg and Vern Gagne invented NWO, everyone's going to laugh in my face. That's just the reality of the situation, because it seems ridiculous. Now, I can say this for a fact, that Greg Gagne did not invent the NWO. But the concept of an invasion of WCW was something that's been talked about, especially in the sheets, since, I would say, 89, 90, 91. There are reports of Greg and Vern negotiating with WCW to do an invasion. So when Greg says that he created the invasion type NWO type angle, he pitched it. Now WCW was like, nah, we're not going to do that. To the point that Larry Zybszcko, when he came into WCW, he was currently the AWA World Champion, and they announced him as such on the show before he debuted. Now, when he debuted, they got rid of any mention of the AWA. So Greg is not wrong in saying that I had this concept for an invasion. Bischoff's in my office. He's hearing me pitch this, and that sparks a little thing in Eric's head. He remembers it, and then he comes up with the concept of the NWO. Now, invasions in wrestling is something that's been going on for quite a while. It's not necessarily something that's a new concept, a rival promotion coming in and invading a promotion, an established promotion. That's something that's happened in wrestling for years. You can go back as early as when they brought in Lanny and Randy Savage. When they brought in Lanny Poffo and Randy Savage from ICW. That was a pseudo invasion. You want to talk about 80s with Ishii Gundam. And, when Choshi takes his people and forms JWP, and they invade they leave New Japan and they form this company, and then they invade all Japan. That's an angle that went on forever over in Japan. You want to talk about the whole Texas, world class and the USWA thing that they were doing, even at this point in the early 90s, where they're having, pseudo kind of invasions. You had Smoky Mountain invading Memphis. You had the WWF who came down to Smoky, and they had Coco Beware, Bret Hart, and Owen Hart, and Lex Luger and Tatanka come down and invade Memphis. So the concept of an invasion angle like that is not necessarily something that is linked to the NWO, like they invented this shit. The NWO worked not because it was an invasion, it's because the characters they had were fucking cool. I'm sorry, but in 1996 there weren't a cooler motherfucker on the planet than Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. You know what I mean? And it seemed real, and then they're in this promotional war, and it worked because historically invasions don't necessarily work like you think they're going to. Usually no one gets over. Because who's going to do the job? You know what I mean? Like, who's going to do the job? Like, if you had, like, this, it goes back to, like, back in the day when they used to do, like, the WWF champion versus the NWA champion, and every single time it's a fucking time limit draw.
Yeah.
Or it's a double count out. You know what I mean? So, like, no one ever gets over that way. Like, someone had to win both the belts, and it doesn't work unless someone wins both the belts. You're stealing a house, essentially.
Yep.
So, Matt, what are your thoughts on Greg Gagne's claim of inventing the NWO and how he's not necessarily wrong because he pitched that concept in early 1991, late 1990. So what are your thoughts on invasion angles in general wrestling and the way Greg Gagne says things?
In general, I'm not a huge fan of them. Sort of get done poorly. I always think one of my favorite examples of like that was the NXT.
Yes.
And just came out one week and just completely leveled the playing field and got everyone's attention. And then it just was we're going to line him up and just feed him to John Cena. And that was it. It was like, you could have done so much. I always think back, like with Cena, like, I wonder if it was his ego, or if it was McMahon. But, like, even when Brock destroyed him, we could have had John Cena on a mission. I'm going to redeem myself. The whole, like, Rocky running in the snow montage of him trying to better himself to, like, defeat, get back at Brock. Nope, just got him, like, same old. Like, again, this, just because you can do the same old doesn't mean you have to. Like, it's still going to sell tickets, but you could, build a bigger audience. And I think one of the biggest things in wrestling is the small-mindedness, is not thinking long-term. And, when you say, like, Greg Gagne says, I created NWO, like, okay, that's a very big fish to throw out there. I mean, I could say I taught Triple H how to do a power bomb. I mean, he almost knocked me out with one the first time he did it, but it doesn't mean I taught him how to do one, I remember way back when at Killer Quality School, I one time gave someone the Scorpion Deathlock. And this is in class. And someone called it that, and he was like, stop, waved us all, and he said, bullshit. And here was this whole story about how he taught it to Misty Blue Sims, who had it stolen and given to Sting for his finisher in WCW. And that, mind you, it also was the sharpshooter, but whatever. But just like, I
You
think
mean the Sasori Gatame that was invented by Riki Choshu in Japan?
yeah, hey. But it's just one of those things that almost.
Didn't Ronnie Garvin use it too?
He may have. I remember the Garvin stomp and that.
Do you know the person? Do you know the person who showed Bret Hart how to do the sharpshooter was?
Was it you?
It wasn't me. Conan.
Really?
Yeah, Bret Hart tells that story. That Conan showed him how to put it on.
Nice. Well, anyways, yeah. So I'm just saying that when it comes to who's the what's the old saying about success has many fathers and failure has none.
Yes.
Everyone wants to be a piece of that, and I always think about Bischoff and that whole thing is, if I'm writing a movie, that plays very well into logical. Okay, that guy was in the meeting, put that in the back of his head. Then it was in a writers' meeting and said, "Hey guys, how about this?" And that thing exploded. And then years later, Eric Bischoff's this huge player.
Yeah.
Which in Hollywood happens all the time, where somebody is a showrunner for some show and goes on and creates something else, and that something else isn't as big as the other show, but
think about Bischoff, and I like Bischoff a lot. I met him. He was a super down to earth guy, super cool dude, right? Nice guy. When it comes to Bischoff, the thing that amazed me about Bischoff is the fact that how incredible he is as a salesman, and how he was able to navigate the waters of Turner, just climbing up the corporate ladder and dealing with that Turner kind of mindset that they had at the time, navigating the pitfalls. That's what's fascinating about me. Not the stuff that he created or even Nitro. Is the fact that he was able to get shit done where guys like Jim Hurd and Bill Watts and where these guys failed, and he was able to navigate those minefields to execute this and to be the #1 wrestling program for 83 weeks. To me, it was longer. It started getting really good in 1983, but que sera, sera. His ability to bring in Hogan into WCW and the fact that he's able to basically just at this corporate level be able to talk to these guys so they understand and able to give him the necessary support to kind of get this done. And I listen to this podcast sometimes. I'm not an avid listener, but I do like the the corporate culture, because I come from a corporate world myself, and the guys who are trying to stab you in the back, and the guys who are trying to drag you off that ladder, and it's funny because one of the things that Bischoff did as soon as WCW started cooking, he moved WCW out of the Turner offices and got his own office away from the CNN center. That's brilliant. No one can watch what I'm doing. He's smart. He's super smart when it comes to the business aspect. And if I need someone to run the business of professional wrestling, I'm going with Bischoff. Now, I wouldn't have him on my writing team. I wouldn't necessarily have him as an announcer. But in terms of running the business of professional wrestling, I'm probably going with Bischoff in his prime. I don't know how he is now. He didn't last too long in his last run of WWE, but Bischoff, we're talking about 1994 Bischoff. I'm taking him. He's coming with me to meetings because he can sell anything to anybody. And he's a salesman. That's how he got his job in the AWA. He's selling fucking ninja stars, a game with a Velcro vest that you throw ninja stars and shit. And he worked in syndication, and he worked his way up. So for a lot of guys that are hey, Bischoff didn't pay his dues, he came up. He literally started at the bottom and worked his way up. And that's something that I appreciate from someone that he wasn't oh, I'm so and so's friend. I have a friend over at Turner, and I work at Pizza Hut, and I'm going to be in charge of this wrestling company. Or hey, you like wrestling, don't you? You're a corporate attorney. You be in charge of it now, which happened. Calvin Fry was a lawyer, and they're oh, you like wrestling, right? All right, you're in charge of it now. Oh, the whole Turner in the late '80s, early '90s. That whole shit fascinates me. Just that corporate culture from the '80s and '90s. This is and their buyouts and their mergers and stuff like that. It's amazing to me. But I really think that. But yeah, when it comes to Greg, he says what you would consider outlandish things, but there's some facts to back that up. I've read it in the sheets about how to talking about this AWA invasion of WCW, and how WCW tried it later in '92 with the USWA. They wanted Lawler to come in and fight Luger, and like '91, and sometime in 1991, like that's real things. So that concept of that invasion has been in WCW for quite a while before the NWO exploded onto the scene. They just needed the right guys to pull that off, and they got them. That's for sure. But it's funny because everything kind of fell into place for that. Because I don't think they had that in mind when they brought in Hogan. And then they started bringing in all Hogan's friends. And you see a lot of ex-WWF guys show up all of a sudden. Like WWF stars, like your Duggins and your Bossmans and your Earthquakes and your Brother Brutais, Bruce the Barber Beefcakes. And you start seeing these WWF guys show up. You're like, oh. And then it's just like, oh, we're getting Scott Hall and Kevin Nash, and they do this whole thing. So, I think overall, I mean, when it comes down to crazy stuff that Greg Gagne says, I would check that as sort of.
That gets like out of five. Greg.
It's not a lie.
It gets
two Greg Gagne faces, 2 high flyers, but it's not a lie. He's telling the truth. It just, again, it's the way he puts things sometimes. Like,
okay,
we'll talk about other things he said about Saturday Night's main events and the UFC on future episodes.
Nice.
Oh. All right, guys. So we are officially out of time. So for Matt Riley, I'm Alex G. Have a good night.
Wrestling fans, I've watched this native of San Diego, California. He is Jesse the Body Ventura. He is 262 pounds, and I've watched your career, Mr. Ventura, over the past 5 or 6 years. And, of course, everybody very much aware of the fact that you teamed up with Golden Boy Adrian Adonis out of New York City. And a couple of years back, as a tag team, you were fortunate enough to pick up the World Tag Team Championships, subsequently carrying those belts around for well over a year, and then dethroned recently, this, as a matter of fact, last year, by none other than the high flyers of Greg Gagne and Jim Brunzel. However, Jesse Ventura, for the most part, you've had your way over the past few years. There's a young man that has entered the AWA very impressively, and that is none other than the incredible Hulk Hogan, a man who I think could truly test your strength.
Oh, he'll test my strength, but the body will prevail. Mean Gene, let's talk about other stuff. I'll get to this arm wrestling. I'll get to what Hulk Hogan wants to do with the body, and that is break arms with the strongest arm in wrestling.
Oh, my, how you carry
The
on.
man is going to get embarrassed, but first I want to say this. You know, very close by here in St. Paul, Minnesota, a few weeks back, the Rolling Stones were in town.
They were.
Good friends of mine. And let me tell you, Mean Gene, and all you people out there, Mick Jagger, Keith Richards, and Ron Wood called up the Body and says, Body, we need you to bodyguard us. We need you to announce us. So that's what I did. I was the announcer and the head bodyguard for the Rolling Stones.
You were the announcer for the Rolling Stones
The announcer,
concert?
Jack. And let me tell you this. They didn't ask one Hulk Hogan. They didn't ask Greg Gagne, Jim Brunzel. They asked Jesse the Body Ventura. Right there. Take a look at this paper right there, right there.
All right, everyone from wrestlers to guitar salesmen got in on the Stones action Saturday night. Jesse the Body Ventura, all-star wrestler, recently featured, by the way, in this particular publication, canceled a match in Chicago, Illinois to introduce the Rolling Stones at the St. Paul Civic Center.
There it
I'm
is.
impressed.
You better be impressed. Hogan, you're going to be impressed.